was Ida B. Wells? Ida B. Wells was born into slavery on July 16, 1862, in Holly Springs, Mississippi, and was later emancipated in 1865 alongside her parents after the Civil War had come to an end via the Emancipation Proclamation. At about age 16, she had been orphaned after the death of her parents caused by the yellow fever pandemic and took on the responsibility of her five surviving younger brothers and sisters. Soon she started to work in a rural Mississippi school as a teacher in order to earn money for herself and her family. After a couple of years, Wells moved towards Memphis for a higher paying teaching position. Throughout her life, Ida B. Wells had taken part in many different activities that included being an educator, journalist, anti-lynching crusader, women's suffragist, and early civil rights movement leader. She was seen as outspoken, articulate, and fearless in the United States. While she had written about inequalities in many areas of life for her church newspaper, Wells never experienced anything like that herself. This was until one day in 1884 when the Southwest Railroad had forbade her from sitting in the ladies' coach although she had a ticket and was forcibly removed by three men. After this encounter, Wells sued the railroad and wrote about the experience and treatment she had received, which gained much success. Between this and the uproar about her criticism of the school systems, Wells had a career change from teacher to journalist. Becoming a journalist was no easy feat, especially for colored people back in the day, let alone women. After three of her male friends were lynched for a crime they did not commit, Wells used her journalism to expose the motives behind the violence. She spoke of the racial prejudices and the meaning behind lynching and how they are a systematic attempt to subordinate the black community, as lynching had become a main tactic in terrorizing those of color. This had gotten attention from both black and white people and resulted in a white mob setting fire to her free speech office, putting a price on her head and threatening her life while Wells was out of town. Although she now had a target on her back, Wells did not give up her anti-lynching activism. In 1893, Frederick Douglass had invited Wells to Chicago to work on a pamphlet to explain lack of African American representation at the World's Fair. In 1894, Wells had traveled to England to speak of the atrocities of lynching and racial oppression being delivered to those of color in the United States. After London, Wells had returned to Chicago in 1895, where she'd been welcomed by the Ida B. Wells Club, which was named in her honor. Wells was active in advocating for the rights of black women, and the broader black community. She had also founded several suffrage organizations for black women that included the League of Colored Women, the National Association of Colored Women, and the Alpha Suffrage Club. A couple years after being in Chicago, in 1895, Wells had married Ferdinand L. Barnett, who was also a fellow Crusader, a well-known attorney, and the founder of the Conservator newspaper. Barnett had two children from a previous marriage, which she was widowed, but him and Wells had two of their own, with four children altogether in 8 years. Wells had continued her activism, journalism, and suffrage work throughout the years of her life. Although she was busy being a wife and mother, that did not deter her from her relentless fight for social justice. Among all the clubs and organizations she was part of, she created the first kindergartens for black children in Chicago, condemned President Wilson for the mistreatment of African American soldiers during World War I, and ran a rooming house and social center called the Negro Fellowship League, and even ran for Illinois State Senate. She is not to be forgotten, not the amount of effort she put into the rights of African Americans.